That is the part when I struggle.
Makes sense. It's not easy, honestly. I will do that for an interview for someone, just because it really touches almost all the parts.
Yeah.
About getting props and stuff, and like it's not that easy to implement feature, honestly. But also it's really good, so you can get a good grasp and really good grasp of where to put the state and where to update and stuff like that. I'll just go through it last time, so just get refreshed. So remember that we have an item. An item was inside the list, and the list was inside the app. Okay? So we render multiple items. The same number of items that we have here, it's we render them. So every item here is backed by an item component. So if we go to the item component, it has a state, which is edit and edit value of edit value input. What does that mean? When you click edit, you switch to this view. You get the idea?
Yeah.
So edit is responsible. So is edit is responsible for having this select like conditional view.
Yeah.
So this is the first piece of state. So this is how we should think about React. When you have a view that is changing over time, there is some sort of a state that backs this transition. So if I will have a form, let's say I have a form like with like a lot of websites, they have a form with three like so like you go next and next and next. Yeah, three kind of like forms or three states. So there's the name or something. You go next. It will take you to another form. You go next. So, but it's at the end, it's just one form. You're seeing the transition, but it's just like one component disappearing, another component. So with this, I need the state to represent which form I'm in now. And because I have three states, I cannot use a boolean. What's the easy thing? I can use a number, 0, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12, up to you. So it's really important to think about like which state is backing this transition or this change in the UI. This is really crucial in React. And the second one is for holding the input value. So when I will start typing here, the value will go here in this input. Make sense? So this is the first part. This doesn't have anything to do with the list, doesn't have anything to do with the app. This is just here. Now when I click edit, there is either a transition to the input, and when I click it back, it will transition back and save it. So how we are modeling that? We have a toggle edit method, function, and we say if is edit, what does it mean? It means that we are editing and we want to go to the non-edit mode. We run this, which is what? Which is saving the value, which is the edit input value, and which item I'm in, to the app component. So this is calling a method from the app component. You can see here, update to do text. So it's receiving the item ID and a new text. And I'm passing to it the ID and the input value, which is a new text. Make sense? So I call this, and after that, I transition back. I say edit is non-edit. And next time, so now it's like this, when I click edit the next time, edit is false. So I will not run this. I will straight away go and run this. So I will flip it to this state. Make sense? And this method is just simply calling, it's a method here that does the map. And if the item ID is equal to the ID that we are passing, it will change the title and return the item. Otherwise, it will just return the item without touching it. Any questions?
Can you show props?
I'm passing items, delete item, toggle item, update item. No. just find this or so update text is just a method that we receive in the list, and in the list we pass again this stuff. It's like up gives to list and list gives to I, to grandchildren. Make sense? Or it's still a bit confusing?
You want to use for next for loop in the React for loop.
I usually don't advise you to do that, but you can of course do that because at the end it's JavaScript. The problem with for loops doesn't return anything because it's a statement, not an expression. So at least as far as I remember, I think the expression is what returns something. Compiler's theory. Yeah. So a statement is something that will do something in the computer, like a for loop or an if. An expression is something that will evaluate to something, like a plus, like a map. It will evaluate to, it will give you a return. But a statement, it will just do something. So when you do a while loop, the while loop will not give you anything. So you are responsible to actually store the while loop. So let's say I want to do this. I want to transform this to a while loop. Okay? Now it's easy to put it here. But now if I will do a while loop, that will not do anything.
Then you have to know also how many items you have and all that.
Yeah, so let's try and do that. So I will do this. So I will just like change this to be list render. Just call it list render. Here I will say const list render. It's an array. Okay. Now I will do for let I equal 0. I is less than items dot length plus I. Okay. And I will say here, for example, item. Okay. But to name this, so here we say item of I. We want a specific item. Here we say also item of I. Items I. Make sense? We take specific item because before the map was giving it by also now we need to access it through it. Now I have one item, so I can say list render. Exactly, it's really unnecessary to do all the because this is the idea about for loops and while loops. They are manual. You tell the computer what to do, but the map it will just. So now I need to push the item, and now I have the render. So the idea is like I loop for every item. I create an item. I push it to the array. So at the end, I will have an array full with items, and I render it here. So this list to render is a variable that holds the thing. Does it make sense? It's really weird, honestly. Like I and pushing and stuff. But the map does that like automatically. So the idea is that a map will also return an array. So that's an array. Either you construct it manually or you build it with a while loop or a for loop or up to you. Make sense? So we will end this. I have a problem with CodeSandbox. I can never sign in. It's like I don't know why I cannot sign in. I had this issue for quite some time. Why some time? I cannot sign in. That's weird.
try to do that. Maybe
It's only for me. It's not. It's some people. It works for them. I don't know why. Sign in.
I'm sure it's only some people just signed in.
Yeah, everybody. It works for everyone except me.
It's like some authorization issue.
Maybe. I don't know. Honestly. Maybe I overused it. So we will start. Well, I will just start now with doing something a bit simple, which is how we discuss routing. So how we route, because until now you have been familiar with the concept of routing in the backend. So the backend, I don't know. I can write. Do we have
Scheitern mai sfârșit, cred că e acolo.
Do you have something so I can do? Just need one. Thank you. So, just to give you an overview of what you've studied in Node.js, so you have a client, okay, and you have a server, which is just, there are two computers, just a fancy way we draw it. Like, probably your computer is faster than the server that the website that the Danish government is running on or something. You know what I mean? It's like the computers now are so powerful, but there's no point in like, but usually we draw it like this because some servers are so big. But the server is just a computer. There is nothing different from between server and computer. Okay? Your computer is like my computer, for example, is much better. People who have Macs here, it's much powerful than traditional servers. Server has like 2 gigabytes of RAM. So server is just a computer. We draw it like this because just to give you sort of an abstraction. So usually the let's draw this called sequential diagram. It's a diagram of sequence. So usually you go to a website and you say my website. So I will not like, let's say it's my website or my.com. Okay? We don't need to, so the you do a request to the server. Say this is a client, this is server. Okay? So you go to mywebsite.com. Your computer initiates a request. There is a whole shit of internet going on, like DNS and stuff, and like I don't know, like nuts and stuff. Doesn't matter. But at the end, your computer will find my.com. Okay. So you will do a request to it. The server will have sort of We will talk now on a high level. We'll not talk about HTTP, but we'll talk how we build web apps. Some stuff are wrong here, but because it's not wrong, but it doesn't apply to all things. But we are limited to what we use, which is Node.js or any other type of framework. So we have slash. It will run some piece of code. We have slash home. It will run some other piece of code. We have slash about. It will run another piece of code. Okay? So express or some, so your computer will receive the request, which is slash. It will go to the server. The server will notify Node, and Node will notify Express, and Express will say, oh, which path is this? It's this one. Do I have a request handler for this one? Remember, we used to say get and post and give it. And it will say, yes, I have. So it will invoke this function, and it will return something, and that thing will be returned to the user in response. And the response usually it's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Could be something else. Could be, I don't know, an XML file. Could be JSON if you have an API. Could be many things. We don't know. It will return a response. That response differs. And after that, the user will go to another page. It will initiate the same request. It will go find, for example, this slash home. It will run this instead of this, and it will return. Okay? This is the sequence of how the user will interact with the website. So this is a traditional website. A website that is divided into pages. Okay? In the modern world of SPAs and single-page applications, this story kind of differs, not really this way, but differs somehow. So let's do this. So now in the modern world of React, not all the time, but just when we talk about SPA specifically, we say we have the same story, we have routes, we have icon and stuff. So the first time your website requests the server will return all the necessary HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Okay? So you will not return an HTML page based on this one. And if it's this one, you return a different HTML. No. You will return all your JavaScript. This is why they mock about like a lot of websites and say website has 2 megabytes of JavaScript. Because it will return, usually, we can split that and stuff that we discussed last time about splitting JavaScript when we call it body. But overall, we return everything. So now we have HTML, CSS, and JS. Let's talk about our context. We don't care about other things. We care about context of React. In the case of React here, the HTML file is just like few lines of code. We don't have HTML file. Just an index and it's empty. CSS, we have a bit of CSS. We can add more, we can delete, it doesn't matter. But we have a lot of JS, a lot of JavaScript. So I think it's fine. So now you return this, and the key difference here is like this HTML page is sort of empty compared to this one. Before the browser requesting a page, and the server will return an HTML file, and the browser will render it straight away. So browser didn't really need to run JavaScript. They can just like display the HTML. Because the HTML has all the necessary information. The FPs, age, all the tags. But now our HTML is empty. So the browser will actually run JavaScript, and that will create HTML. You get the idea? Yeah. When we will run our Java, so the first time the page is empty. When we run JavaScript, we return all the allies, and we call render. And when we call render, React will start working, which is React is JavaScript. React Java. And it will output HTML. So instead of building HTML on the server, we move to build HTML on the client. Make sense? So this is the story until now.
It's more faster.
Depends. For example, this is, if you have a shitty computer or a shitty phone, this is really bad. Means like really low. I'm sorry to use bad words.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to use the bad
Very descriptive.
I'm fighting on. I'm sorry for the bad words, but if you have like a low-end mobile phone, you know what I mean, like shitty phone, cheap. I'm sorry. Like a lot of our phones, it will need a lot of time. It will consume a lot of battery to run all the jobs. So the user will not see something immediately. The user needs to wait for the execution of jobs.
Yeah.
Compared to this, the server will return clear HTML. So here, we only display the HTML. We only have a page.
Even if you will wait until CSS and JavaScript will render.
No, but we don't need JavaScript to render.
Yeah, but in the first case, you will have HTML structure. Yes?
What do you mean by
If
HTML?
you have sheet form and you get this response.
Yeah,
First
the response will be like HTML.
HTML, yeah.
So the browser can directly go and run it on the browser. So there is no extra step here that the browser needs to run something to run. No, we will bring the HTML as we are bringing it. There's the H1, put the H1. There's the body.
Yeah.
But here no, we finish JavaScript, we finish HTML, we finish all the stuff. After that, the browser can decide. And to visualize this is just the first step. To visualize this, let's go to Code Sandbox. Code Sandbox. Yeah, it's this one. So for the phone. So if I will do this, I will go to network. Or I will go to performance instead. There's a I'm recording, I guess. I am. So I will say network, slow 3G, performance. This is a profiler. I'm not sure exactly if you're familiar with, but yeah. So this is just so this is the main. You can see here how much time spent the browser will spend on every doing every operation. So loading, scripting. Scripting is like half a second. Like that is a lot compared to any other things. And after that, rendering. So scripting is the main thing you can see here in the chart. Why? Because we need to parse all the JavaScript and run it, which is a lot of JavaScript. So we need to wait for almost everything to. And this is just showing the JavaScript execution. But just to give you a hint that there's a lot of overhead when we have JavaScript to render and stuff. And the problem before we had JavaScript, but before the JavaScript was not critical. So we could render the HTML page, and after that run JavaScript in the old lab. But now we cannot. Now we need to wait for JavaScript. So the user will not see anything. Like the user will be waiting for JavaScript to run so we can see something. So of course it has its own good like
Pros and cons.
exactly. It has drawbacks and it has also. So it's a trade-off. It's a matter of trade-off. So this is a comparison about like how. Of course I'm omitting a lot of details here just to confuse you. There's a lot of stuff going on. If someone will see me doing this, he will say that you are wrong because there is this and this. But we are trying to abstract. After that, you are welcome to go and go deeper. But this is just a high level idea. But this is clear. So mostly here we will have slash, and that slash will render everything. It will return everything. Make sense? So if we have slash home, and slash about. How are we gonna do that? We will, if the user wants to go mycon to slash, we will send everything. So the client now has all the JavaScript and CSS to run them. If we go to my home, we will return everything again, or what? What's the issue? This, yeah, but I already have all. So I already have all the components.
Yeah, well,
to run
so
the
So
everything.
it doesn't go to server,
That's-
it manipulates inside the client.
Yes. So the idea is like we move this to here. Yeah. So we say exactly. So we say home about.
Does that mean it will take more time in the beginning, but later it will be fast?
Precisely.
Yes.
So now every time we want to request something inside JavaScript, so how we do it is like JavaScript in the console, there is a location. So you can say window.location. Window.location holds information about the current page. And you can listen. It's like an event listener to the click. You can listen for when the location changes. So when the location changes, we would say if location is equal to home, render component 1. If location is equal to above, render component 2. So this is how we do it. We are not going to the server anymore. Make sense? So JavaScript now is responsible for doing all the routing and stuff. But mostly, you will have a backend. But for example, you will have slash user, slash to-dos. But that will return just JSON. So for example, to return the home, or to return the about, we need information about the website. We will do a request, but that request will not, we will not load HTML and CSS and JavaScript in that request. We will just request some JSON. It's pretty small. And we get some JSON back, like we did with to-dos. We just get to-dos or stuff, and we render it. So we are only doing requests to get data. We are not doing requests anymore to get HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Make sense?
I have a question.
Yeah, of course.
Like if we are talking, like for example, YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get all the videos behind my computer when I go like YouTube.com.
But you need to see what I'm talking here about. It's about the assets, CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. Loading data, it's something different. For example, YouTube will fetch only the 6 first videos. When you start scrolling, it will fetch more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what I mean here by loading HTML and CSS and JavaScript, I don't mean loading the YouTube videos. This is something else. Because to load the videos, you need to parse JavaScript and understand which user is this, and what's his role, and what he's subscribed to. And I cannot decide that until I render the full page. After that, I can start getting the data. So getting the data about the video, it's something different than really showing the page. For example, in our case, we render the page, but without the to-dos. When the page is rendered, it's done rendering, we fetch the to-dos. When the component, this is why I said last time, component data, we fetch the data.
Oh, okay.
You're drawing now the
Yeah.
page?
Yeah.
So we request all the components and all JavaScript, and when the JavaScript is about to run and be displayed, it will start fetching the data.
Okay, so yeah, because the fetching is inside the component.
Exactly.
You are having the component.
So the browser needs to be done. The browser needs to be done with
Yeah.
JavaScript and stuff.
Okay.
Until that, we can get the data.
Is
Make sense?
Yeah.
So this is just an over simplification.
But is it the same as SPM is?
What?
Is it the same SPM single?
SPM means single page application. So
It's the same.
yeah, so no, this is single application because now we have a one page, and what we are doing, we are just changing the page.
Yes.
If you go to slash home, we render component 1. If you go to 2, you render component 2. So it's just one page. You're just faking to the user that you have routes, but technically you don't have. You're just faking to the user based on your route. So it's a single page application. Any questions? And you can also, you can mix match all these concepts. So you can have an SPA, and at the same time you can have pages. So for example, you can have all the about, home, and stuff. But if you go to the contact us, we do a real request. So you can mix match like between a lot of paradigms. So you can have an SPA, but for two different routes, for example, a route for contact us and another route for something else, you can have doing real like requests like here.
To divide the load or?
Depends. For example, on Netflix, so the first time you go to Netflix, they will not return everything. They will just return a sign-in page, which is really small.
Yeah.
Once you are done with the sign-in page and you go to the full page, they give you a lot of JavaScript and stuff because now you would be watching. So in the case of Netflix, they will have like slash sign in. I would say just si sign in, and they will have slash. So they will say, are you logged in? No. Send him this page. If you are when you are done loading or when you are signed in and stuff, you can go to this page and they will return all the JavaScript and CSS and stuff. But in the beginning, they will just send you a small file with a form and some styles. So you can mix match wherever like. And this is kind of makes sense because you don't want to you don't want the user to download or because the idea is like if you have 2 megabytes of JavaScript or 1 megabyte, which usually you would do, that's really bad. It's better to have like 400, 300 or something. But if you have a large JavaScript, even 400 is not like a small amount. The user needs to wait to see the page. And if the user there's like some research done, if the user would wait more than 4 seconds, they will not be interested in the page anymore. So these companies are trying to minimize the first time to paint. It's called the first time you see something in the. So, but if you are a small business, you don't care. It depends. So these stuff, like you sit with yourself and with the business holder, stakeholder, and you see which one makes sense for you.
I have a question. What if you updated the page in 7 minutes?
What do you mean?
Did you get all HTML just?
We don't have HTML really. We don't really have HTML.
Okay. Do you load all this stuff again or?
No. Depends. So you can actually get all this stuff and cache them.
Yeah.
And now even if you go to the website after 1 month, Chrome will know that, oh, I already fetched this stuff 1 month ago. So you can do a lot of optimization around that. You can cache stuff. Or you can cache stuff for 1 month. Or you can cache stuff until you change the code. So if you change the code, you can notify the clients that there is a new JavaScript file. There's so many things.
Yeah, but she's asking if a user like me just hit refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Refresh with
It depends on the website. Because the website can tell Chrome to cache stuff. And Chrome will know that everything is here. The website can tell Chrome to not cache, everything to refresh. This is something you figure out with yourself. If you think that you have really frequent JavaScript that changes everything, you should not do that. But most websites, they cache.
Okay.
So when you say refresh, it's already in Chrome.
And how do we do that? Cache thing.
It's called service workers. If you want to find it, service worker. If you want to, but it's outside.
Okay.
Any questions? So this is what we'll be doing in JavaScript now. We will have like routing. So we will have like if it's home, run this component. If it's what? Slash home. If it's slash home, run this component. If it's slash about, run this component. So how we will do that? So technically, we can do something really kind of tricky, which is like if you say window.location, or you can say also location, because everything that you can access on window is. So you can say location, and it's an object, That has like a lot of stuff. One of them is path. So if I will go to google.com, I'll say location, path, name it slash, because we are in slash. If we go to test, it's slash search. These are query params.
Yes.
These are just query params. So I can say if location.pathname is equal to this, render this component. This is manual work. But in the React board, at least there is like famous packages to do routing. And they integrate with React really well. So we will use one of these packages, but this is just to give you a hint that these packages just uses an if-else under the hood. But we'll use a package to make life easier. Make sense? So one of these packages is React Router. There's many of them. It's called the React Router DOM. Okay? In your app, you will say npm install React Router DOM or yarn add React Router DOM or something. So you would install it locally. Make sense? Like every package, because it's an npm package.
Yeah. And that's supposed to be inside our Ride project?
Yeah, because it's part of your project.
Yes.
So you say npm install React Router DOM. I'll do it in Code Sandbox, but you can install packages, you know. So in Code Sandbox, you can do it here, add a dependency, and you can search for dependencies. So you can say React Router DOM, and it's the first one. It's by React Training. It's a company called React Training. So it's React Router DOM. Make sense?
Yes.
So we choose this one. And now I have it in my dependencies. So how I will use it? The first thing I will say import. I will just say X here. I will not name it anything. I will just say React Router DOM. Okay. So it has some named exports. One of them is a browser router. So browser router is a component that should wrap all your page. So it's a top level thing. So here we will say we can do it here. We
Don't
don't
need a div anymore.
Render
no because we are rendering because the diff
Oh,
was
yeah, it's
because we
component, yes.
it doesn't matter. I can add the diff like that's not.
because of instead of render, use browser.
You render a browser router. It's a component. So before we were rendering profile and to-dos and items, this is a component that it's built by someone else. That we are using it. It's the same way that your component to-dos can be really like popular and you can put it in GitHub and people start using it. So instead of like using your own component, you will use a component built by someone. Make sense? And this is how we will work in real project. You will use a lot of components built by other people. You will have like I don't know, model components, tooltip components, stuff like
So
that.
this one only will set it up or render it to the browser, this component?
This component is responsible. It doesn't do anything. This component is only. We will see exactly its purpose. But this doesn't do anything. We will understand after. Okay. So now let's delete this. And to start defining routes, you import the route component. So there's a component called route. It takes a path. Let's say slash, and it's a component. And it takes a component. So let's say test, or let's say home. I'll just put it here in the top. don't. I'll just create a function and that's it. Make sense?
Yes.
Let's create another path. Let's call it about.
Without slash?
Slash.
We can do slash or you can because it's the first one, so it's not that important. So you can see here I have definitions for two routes. One is called route, path equals slash, and which component to render? This one. Path about, which component to render? About. So if I would do this, if I would go to slash about, it will render both home and about.
Because of slash?
No, we'll discuss that why. But just accept that it will render both. So you can say here exact. This is the idea. Before we weren't using exact, that means that slash is already part of slash about.
Yes.
So it's using a partial match because slash is inside. So if you don't want that, you can say exact.
Okay.
Exact say exactly slash, exactly about. And now we have only about. So if we go to slash, we'll get home. Make sense? So this is sort of how we do routing in React. It's not that difficult. You just have a path and you give it a component. Of course, there's so many things if you want to access params and stuff after, but this is the basic idea. Now let's say how we navigate between two pages. Okay. First of all, let's I will put all this stuff in a div. I would say here h1. This is my app. Now, this my app will render all the time, and these will render conditionally. Make sense? Because it's not part of any routes. Let's do something. Let's have links in between. So home goes to page because this is what we are missing. We have routes, we need links. To use a link, usually we say a tag and stuff. Instead, you say you import the link component. So in home, we will say link. You say two instead of saying href. Two is simpler than href. Like I'm going two instead of using cryptic hyper reference. So let's say we want to go to slash about because we are in home. About. We copy the same one here, we put it here, and we say slash, and we say home. Make sense? So now we are in home. I'll just open this again here. We can go to home about. You can see I'm switching in between them without even having reload or anything. This is my IP still there, and it's like I'm just switching between routes. You can imagine that about is not about. It's like a huge page. It doesn't matter. You can have a huge component. And the same thing with home. And you can see I'm switching in between. Yeah. So it's quite simpler to do routing. It's not a.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused with Node.js because we did a lot of backend stuff that we can do much simpler here.
Well, it depends. This is more for UI routing. But if you have an API and you have data, you will still have Node.js. You will say slash users, give me the JSON data of users. For example, the to-dos. If you want to go to slash about and returns information about yourself, from where you will get it? From the backend. So in the backend, you will have JSON API. So the backend will not be sending HTML anymore, but it will be sending JSON. Make sense?
Yeah.
But it's not useless. Nothing is useless.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about get and post the
No,
method?
this routing is for UI. This doesn't replace your backend. This routing is not for if you get a post, you go to the database. This is nothing about database here. REST. This is defining the UI structure. What do you want to see when you go to about? What do you want to see when you go to home? What do you want to see when you go to profile? Okay? After that, when you go to profile, in the backend, there is a get or there is a post to return data.
Yeah.
This is something else.
So it starts with a get method from the database, so you get the information, and after you have the codes in your computer, you will go like if it's slash something, render.
Exactly. You render a piece of
this component.
you render this component. And this component itself, when it will be rendered, in component did mount, it will go and fetch more data.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So you can think about that we have a route called /todos.
Yeah.
Let's for example like it's this one. Yeah. Let's move this. It's quite large, but let's move this to. So I will just copy this code and put it in our project now. Let's say I will create a new file here called new folder to do app. Okay. To do app. Yes. Here I will create a new file. I will name it index.js. I will pass everything here. Now I need the header.
We didn't copy it.
Yeah, sorry. Is this the? Yeah,
It was an index, yes.
it's the header. Just a second. It's
Header.
what makes it the list component.
At the beginning you copied all the list.
No, the list we
No.
didn't complete yet.
Yeah.
So we go to list. We copy everything. Now this should work.
No, we need the index input of this.
Yeah,
didn't
we
list
we
in
just
there.
didn't copy enough files.
Yeah, there it is.
We don't need this anymore. So now we will say export default app. And instead of rendering everything like we did before here, we come here and we say we will say import to do app from to do app because there is an index.html .js inside. Make sense? And now I will have another route called to-dos and we give it to do app. And here let's say we have to-dos or to do. It's just a bit weird, so let's say here Okay. Yeah. So now if we go to do's, I have the to do app in slash to do's.
Yes.
You get the idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if I will refresh, I will have the to do's. I can go back and go back to home straight away. Go back to do's.
Can you do it with slow switching?
I think in the beginning it will take time and after that it should be fine.
Precisely. So if you go to the do's, it will switch immediately and it will say loading. If you go back, switch immediately. So the only issue is loading the data. That's something we cannot control. Of course, we can cache the data. Out of scope. Make sense?
Yes.
Just to see that I can switch in between. Because I'm not going to the server to doing anything. But still, I have the route for. So I have in the server, I have slash to do's to return me all the JSON data of to do's. Make sense? Yes. When I go to the to-dos component, you remember when we said that we don't want to fetch data all the time and stuff? This is exactly the use case. Now, if you are in home, I don't want to see to-dos or waste my money and my bandwidth on to-dos. When I say go to to-dos, now I start fetching the data. When I know that this component is rendered, I fetch the data. Make sense?
What was the PM?
React router DOM.
React.
Router DOM.
Router.
I would put it in the document. No need to write or anything. Like everything is available in the internet. So this is the documentation of it. Make sense? So this is moreover how to do routing. One more thing you need to be aware of is that, so you know that these components home and about, you can replace them with anything. Like we replace, like to do is a complex app, sort of. And we just put it here without really caring about like it. So someone, like for example, I didn't know how to do really work exactly. I just import the files, I put it here. I don't need to know how to do work. You get the idea? So it's a really good abstraction layer. So people doesn't need to, because if you are working on, I don't know, like jQuery or normal like DOM app, you need to understand, how this work is going and how it's fetching data and stuff. But now we don't need to. You import the component, you put it here. Even that it's built for another project, completely. So this is the structure that React brings to you, and it's really good. Make sense? So we have this component about. Yeah.
But what if we don't use exact on about and to do, but we don't need exact here? We're still doing the.
Now, if you go to a route, for example, if you would say slash to do slash, it will run the to do.
Yeah.
Even that there is this.
Okay.
You get the idea?
Yeah,
Because it's
yes.
there is to do.
Yes, okay.
It's better to use exact. So let's do something else. Let's have like a 404 page. Like if the user goes to something that we don't have a route for. And the way we do that, we use the switch component. So we will say, all the stuff that I'm doing here, it's already in the documentation. If you walk through, it's a food page, the page that is sent about React Router. If you go down, there is everything. So we will put these routes here. We will put another route here called path. I don't think we need path, but we have components. Okay, component is not to do, but we'll say not found. Function, not found, return h1, not found. Now it's rendering not found because it's. So if I will go home, I will go to to-dos, I go back about. Let's say the user goes to something we don't know, like test. Now we have a not found. How it works. Why we added this switch. Now the switch will do something interesting. The switch will go through each route based on their definition. And it will say, does this match? No. Does this match? No. Does this match? No. This will match because it doesn't have a path. It will always match.
Yes.
But if you will remove the switch, the last one will always match.
Yeah, right.
So this is why we use the switch. The switch means it will render only one of them.
Like it.
Kind of.
Go like.
Yeah, it will go through and it will render only one. If nothing is rendered, we pick the last one. So if you will reach this one, that means that like nothing of the first ones really matches. So we take the last one. Make sense?
So the last one, like literally.
No, because does this make sense? Does this make sense? Does this make sense? No, no, no. This one. This one will always match because it doesn't have a path.
Yeah.
So this one will always match. So whenever we arrive to the last one, that means that none of the above ones really matched.
Yeah, but I mean, like we have to put it in the last. We can't put it at the first and expect it to.
If you put it in the first, it will always start with this one and it
Yes.
will always pick this one.
So it's syntax.
It will always pick this one,
Okay.
the first one,
Yeah.
because this matches all the time.
Yeah.
And because we have a switch, it will pick one. If you don't have a switch, it can pick 3, 4, 5. It doesn't matter. But switch will only limit it to one. Yeah. True. Make sense? Now let's go to the notion of dynamic, sort of like routes. So let's remove about and let's say profile. Okay? Let's say this is your profile. Or say hi. Let's call this a route called say hi. But say hi needs like, so the format of say hi, it will be like say hi / Yunus. And it will say hello Yunus. So this, or it can say hi test. It will say hello test. Say hi Zoe. It would say hello Zoe. So we have the notion of dynamic sort of URL. It's fixed, but we have a dynamic part that is changing. Make sense?
Yeah.
How we will do that? The way so instead of saying Yunus here, because this will much always say hi Yunus.
Yeah.
So you put the column before it and you name it something new. So you can say name. Make sense? So now if you say hi test, it will render about.
Yes.
If you say hi Yunus or anything, it will always render about. Make sense?
Yeah.
So we need to access this inside the component. This is the idea. We need to have access to this variable inside the component. So the idea is component here. So who's rendering the about component and the home component? This route component is responsible for that. And this route component, when it will render our component, one of these, it will give it props.
Yeah.
So let's say here props. And let's say console.log.
It will go and
No,
No, it would say
because
the name.
React Router gives you a lot of props. We will see so many props.
okay.
We will not need them now, but in the future, when you work in like bigger project, you will need them. So you can see in about we have here. So let's say here Yunus. So we have history, we have location, we have match, we have static context. Location is just the browser location. What's really important for us is history and match. Okay?
Yeah.
So these are 4 props given to us by React Router. Make sense? It gives us 4 props. As I said before, I'm interested in, I will destructure it here. Remember destructor? I can destructor it here. I can say history and match. So history it's also something for the browser history. You can here, for example, say go back, say go forward, so you can actually trigger these buttons manually. This is why some websites will kick you out sometimes if you do something or stuff like that. So with these functions, you can manipulate the history. Make sense? We're not interested in that. Location, it's the browser location with path name and stuff like that. We're interested in match. Match, it's saying is so match is the interesting prop passed by React Router, and it has a handful of information. For example, is exact. Is exact is if the route is exact.
Yeah.
If it's like a exact match or just like a non-exact match. We have the path, we have the URL, and we have params. Params holds the parameters that we have in the URL. So if we say props.match.params, we have an object that has all the information because we can have more than one param in a URL. Yeah, exactly. You can have more param. So here we will say, I will not do this. I will just say props. Just to not confuse. Say const. This dot props. Sorry, props. And here I would say, I will take match. And after that, I will take params. I have params. We will just keep it with params. Now, if we console.log params,
Now we
it's an object.
Yeah.
So we can say here, hello params. So if you pass something else here, test, we say hello test. Make sense? So this is something like Facebook, how Facebook works, or YouTube. So Facebook, when you go to /profile, / a name, they have a dynamic name, like Eunice, like anyone. They take that name. They render the same components. It's the profile component with the avatar with the status, but based on that name, they fetch the data. But it's the same component. YouTube is the same. It's the same video. But based on the video ID, because they have /watch / something, they go and fetch that specific video. But the video component is the same.
Yeah.
It's not different from video to video. But only the data, it's like the to-dos. The item component is the same. But the data behind it, it's different. Make sense?
Yeah.
This is how every kind of large project works. It seems a bit tricky, but it's not. At least the front end, it's not. So they just had a handful sum of components, and they load data, and they have routes. Of course, you can do so many complex and like stuff, but you can build something like YouTube easily. Just fetch a specific ID, display the video. Because there's so many things going on with the video and stuff. That's outside the stuff. There's specialized people in like videos and streaming and stuff. It's not your job. Make sense? Even Code Sandbox, because it's built with React. So you can see here they have /s. So they have a definition of something like this. So this is the URL. They have like router and path equal and this is project ID. And this would render component code editor. And when you go with project ID that it's this one, they can get it from the params and fetch the code specific for this project. Does it make sense?
Yes.
questions.
Can you go to the tabs of, yes, and the URL?
Yeah.
Doesn't it have your project name? Do you,
This one?
yeah.
This one is different because this one is coming from here. It's a sub. They used how it's called subdomain routing. It's a DNS level routing. It's different outside of it. But they use routing, but it's not on the. It's not hidden, but there is no point in using React to route on the front end because this is a web app itself. So on the back end, they need to decide which web app to send you.
Okay, was it you open enough project?
What do you mean?
So you have two projects, different projects that open in one browser.
Yeah, this will change.
Ah, okay.
So it's a sub-level. It's called the subdomain routing. So instead of routing here, you can say here. This is why some website they have app.website.com, user.website.com. So this is a subdomain routing, which is different than path routing. Yeah, you can do a DNS level configuration, but this is completely abstract, so we will try to not go into that. But we're interested in this. Make sense? Any questions? It's clear routing? It's quite easy, honestly. Like it's one of the easiest topic, even that it's the most rewarding topic because it's a lot of features, but it's the easiest. So there's nothing more complex than this in routing. This is all of it. Even if you work in a crazy project, this is all of it. You can have some dynamic stuff happening, but most of the project no. And to do if you want to build a project or something, it's the same thing. So you can see here that I have, if it's a huge project, you can say I have a to-do app. To-do app, like we are not talking about it. It's rendered, but it has its own folder. It's really like a lot of code. But we don't care about that. We just bring the component, we give it to them.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you fix the other components?
Of course.
Why is function app not class app extensor?
This one? Oh, this and this and you
Yes,
mean this
the
one?
use function, yes.
Yeah, up to you. I can make this. I can say class. I'll just say render, and I would say class app extends React component.
Is it the same?
How to
That was the
translate?
functional
And-
component.
Yeah, until now it's the same. The only thing you will not have access to state and stuff like that. Class is more.
If you use function, you can't access
There's no state, yeah.
There is no state.
Yes.
There is, but
So you
it's,
should
Yeah. there
use
is,
class.
but it's a different thing.
Also not constructor.
There is no constructor, life cycle, and stuff. So,
It's
but
better to use class.
no. There is React. They introduced this new thing called hooks. So you can
Read about it.
so you can say state equal React dot use state, and this will give you a state that you can update and change and stuff. It's out of. I really wanted to teach it, but we don't have enough time. So it's your job to go and
That is called hooks.
hooks. Yes, HOOKS.
And,
But just to answer your question, from a perspective of displaying stuff, you return from a function, you return from a render. That doesn't change anything. You just return some JSX, and it will be displayed in the screen.
I have another question.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
Specifically, when I need to write class and function, we can decide.
Up to you. That's more of a personal preference.
Okay, it's the same.
Yeah, now it's the same. We didn't. So you will see that class doesn't have a constructor. A function doesn't have a constructor like this one. Doesn't have state. Doesn't have a this. So you can put context. But there is some stuff to make the function the same features as the class. So I would say it's a complete preference. it's better to invest more in functions and learn about hooks if you are going forward with React. But until now, I cannot force you to do anything.
Split test you use class.
No, functions.
I would say like, so because hooks is relatively new thing, and if you join any company, you will see most of the components written in class. But that doesn't mean it's a norm. It's mainly that they refactoring them. It's a huge project, but now the current situation is like because of the hooks, function can also do whatever like component can do. So for the more hipster companies, they try to use hooks. For the more traditional company, they kind of try to stay with the class.
Yeah. But soon there will be no classes. So, no. Soon there will be no classes, seriously. So, they will be forced to change.
Classes.
So that all this and that will go away.
What?
All this and that.
Yeah. We introduce more weird this and that. Closure, this and that.
The classes, while you heritage some function from the parent,
Yeah.
this is one of the downside of the class.
One of the good things about the class.
Because in some language, for example, Swift, they force the users to use protocols.
Yes, the protocols, yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
And the heritage is not good because
You cannot say it's not good. This is a debate. This is like religion. Like people are fighting for more than 30 years about it's called composition over inheritance. So either you compose using protocols and you define protocols, or you use inheritance to actually inherit stuff. This is a long debate. The Java and the C# people and stuff, they are like inheritance all the way down. And other people like Swift and the modern languages like Go and stuff, they are saying, oh, composition all the way down. It's a fight. Just don't enter the fight. Stay away. Stay away of the fight. Stay away. Use whatever you like. It's also like, but there's no good and bad because if Swift doesn't like use protocols more than inheritance, other languages they use inheritance more than protocol, and no one is bad or no one is good. It's different. But in JavaScript, it's better to be familiar like with functions and stuff because it's mostly a functional language.
Can we compare with two fighting languages?
What?
Can we compare between languages?
Of course you can. Of course. There is this quote. They say, "A fool with a tool is still a fool." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the tool doesn't really matter that much. It matters, but that doesn't make you better. You make the tool better.
Yeah.
So, any questions about routing? About params, about stuff? No? Cool. Glad to hear that. So let's save this project. Let's send it to you. And you can check it out after.
You should check it out.
Exactly. I'm just trying to be nice. We are playing the bad and the good cop here. Like, I'm the nice guy and she's check it out. So let's close this and go through this.
Yeah,
Let's see.
I mean,
Examples. Basic, URL, params, regex if you want to do auth, authentication, custom links, prevent transition, no match, 404, recursive path, sidebars, animation, ambiguous matches, route configs, model. Like, go through this and be a routing expert in React. Okay? You should go through it. So we close this and we close this and we open consent. Now we'll talk about children. Yes, we'll talk about children. We'll completely switch now, sort of, what we were doing. try to put stuff in one file, but that, like I did with the routings, that's just to make it easy for you to go up and down. But that's not something you should follow, please. Make sense? You should never ask me, should I split stuff into one file? Of course you should. That's not something you should ask about. But it's just for the sake of, so I have two choices. Either I go super complex and like good and slide, but that will be complex for you. Or I go super simple. Simpler is better. But simple doesn't work in real life. I cannot be simple in real life. If I would go to real life, you would be lost. You know what I mean?
We'll find our way.
Yeah, you will find a way, but that will make the message more complex. Because if I would split into multiple files now, what you will gain? Nothing.
Simple. If you want to go real life, read some GitHub repo, and then tell me if you're lost or not.
Yeah.
Read code, read documentation. This is like a good habit to cultivate. Read code to children.
Yeah. So yeah. Let's build a component. Let's say class. Function class, it doesn't
Can
matter.
we use function?
What?
Let's use function. Try class.
We already have a function here. Let's see. A function doesn't have anything more like just a function. You return stuff. So let's say class, and we say test.
But with a function, then there's no extended.
Yes, that's true. It's more simple. Let's return a div.
Doesn't mean that the function takes the React by default. Request it by default.
What do you mean?
Extends it by default.
How does the function get the
Get
React?
the React, that's what I
Yeah, the idea is the function. The function doesn't use any of the stuff that we need. So why we inherit a component? Because we need lifecycle and we need state. This is the two things that we need. Component did mounted update, and we need also this dot set state and this dot state. A function doesn't have this stuff, so there is no point in extending because the function doesn't have this stuff. So you cannot say this dot set state because there is no this even in a function. You get the idea? A function is just like
And you can still pass props to it.
yes, but you can
And then when it comes, when you are taking the props and you don't have this prop.
no, you just have props. It's just a function. So all the stuff that you enjoy, like lifecycle, constructor, this, and set state, and methods, it doesn't exist in functions.
No way to get attention.
Yeah. So you can convert this easily to a function. Make sense?
Yeah.
So let's build a component called with border. Brother. With brother. With border.
This naming sounds more like a
Higher order component. And I will use that. I will use it for that purpose. Kind of. Not.
Maybe border.
That's actually a really good name. Yes, that's a really good. Yes. Bothered.
Border.
Bothered. I'm bothered. Bordered. Means like it will have borders. English. English. So the purpose of the so how we will use this component. When we will say border it like this, we put something inside it. We'll display border run. Make sense? We have that, yeah. So this is how we will use it. We will use this component. Of course, now it's not displaying anything. It's returning hello. But I'm putting something inside it. Like, it's completely ignored. If I will remove it or add it, nothing will change. Because simply I'm returning hello. So I want my component to be aware to what we are passing to it. Because before we were passing props. A, B. Now we are passing children to the component. You can see, like this.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
We're passing children. So we want to have access to the children. How will we do that? Well, it's also props. If you say props dot props dot children,
This.
it will refer to this one here. Make sense? So children is just a props too. So we can say here const children now we have the h2. So let's render it as a h4. Make sense?
One more shoot.
What? You want another chart? Wait for 9 months. Let's say a P. Or say a button. Make sense? So children, if you console.log it, it's an array with two things. This is an first item, and it's just an object. Remember the type and stuff, the returns of the AJSX that we discussed, because this will return a function call, what we discussed last time. So it just if we remove one, we have only one object. There's no point for having an array. But if we will use two, we will use an array. If we add another item, like 3. Make sense?
That object is having the history match with that object.
What do you mean?
With the first object, it's props.
No, it's so we can
This
just
object is
It's an array.
Okay.
It's an array. Like if we want to control it, we go
yeah. Just a second.
0, 1, 2.
Yeah, just a second. So this is the object. This is the array. It has 3 things. So what does this mean? This means literally this one. So a button is converted to an object, as I told you, an element before, which is like just an object with props and type of and owner and store. But that's not something you should care about. It's just internal React, as we said with the virtual DOM. This is like virtual DOM nodes. Make sense? It's an array of 2 nodes. This is what we should understand. And yeah, so I can only render the second. Make sense?
Yeah, what if you have another element inside of that with children? So you just,
What do you mean?
you had some
Grandchildren.
hello message, yeah.
Like this? It will be hello. It will literally grab this and copy
Join.
it, put it here.
Okay.
There is no join here. It's HTML. To just paste it there. So just like putting this here. Make sense? Now let's make this component take color. Say red. Okay. And here we will say style. So you can pass a style object in. I don't know if you are familiar with this. Inline styling. So you will pass an object because before you were using inline styling like this,
Yes.
but now you pass an object. And then instead of saying like font size, you say font size like this. This is the only difference. Comic case. So here we'll say border. One pixel, solid, and we will get the color as prop and put it here. You can see the color. If you say
Function normal in line.
You can say green, it will be green. Make sense?
Yes. But is it better to use this inline styling?
Of course not. The way I will do it, I will create a class
Yeah.
called red, a class called blue, a class called green, and based on that, I apply the class. Make sense?
Yes.
But this is just a shortcut. So you can say here, let's say you have, you have class name. And you say class name. And here you say, if color equal blue, sorry for class name equal my blue class color. Else. And you apply the class name. But now we are just being lazy.
Yes. Why in style we have to
This, because if, for example, you want to pass a number, you do like this. If you want to pass a number, you do it like this. If you want to pass an object, you put an object. So these are not for the object. These are like, it means this is an expression. After that, you put the object itself. So you can say here, const style. It's an object. And you put style here. Make sense? So don't be confused with the one. These ones are not related to being an object or anything. These ones are just like, oh, this is an expression. So I can copy this. I'll put it here. Does it make sense? So you can do so many interesting things now with this kind of. So you can say, for example,
What is the usage of this? Mostly
children?
will filter those.
depends.
elements.
So you can. This is, for example, one use case. You can do custom styling. Another use case could be, for example, you can have a component called data loading, and that component you give it a URL, and it will give you the URL back. So it's every time when you want to share a logic, like this logic. So if I can copy border now and pass something completely different to it, and I can reuse it and pass any children I want to.
It's like
Then you need to give a prop. So that prop will.
What do you mean?
Now I'm wondering why you didn't put all of them together or
Because maybe this is in another part of the application. You know what I mean? We don't. Maybe this is in another route. Even.
It's just like reusing the component.
Yes. Make sense? Let's, for example, have. So this is basically just. I don't know if you have any questions about this. Is it clear? No. Let's build another component called show height. Make sense? It will have state. This does super. We don't need that honestly. Say show true. Okay? And now this component will say something. It will take children. And it will say this.state.show render children, otherwise render null. And we can say show height. pass, just pass the same thing. If we change this to false, oh yeah, this should be capital. If we change this to true, we show it again. Let's do it dynamically. Let's have like a click. Let's say toggle show. This dot set state show is not this dot state dot show. So we need to call this method somewhere. I want this button to be able to trigger that.
Yeah.
But that's technically not possible because the button is rendered outside.
Yes.
And I cannot manipulate it from inside. Well, I can, but that would be so cryptic and weird. You get the idea? I want to be able to click this and control this state inside. How am I going to do that? Something we can do is, so we said children is an array if you render multiples, or one object if you render one child. Something a bit weird you can do, you can pass a function. You can do this and pass a function that just return null. Or we can just say null, we don't need to return it. Make sense? So this is a function now. You can see that I'm passing a function. So if I will console.log here, children, it's a function. So if I will return something here, let's say I will return the same thing. I need to wrap it in a div, for example. Okay. It's still a function. It's a function. It's a function that returns this stuff. But I'm not displaying anything. Because I technically need to call the function to print this stuff. Because when I call the function, which is this one, I will return the div and stuff. But now I'm just like rendering a function, which is a bit stupid. Like rendering functions doesn't make any sense. But if I will do this, it will render.
Yes.
I know that.
bracket is always
Yeah.
trigger the function, right?
This one, because children is a function.
Yeah.
It's this one, which is a function, as we saw in children. It's a function here.
So you need to call it.
So I need to call it.
But what about the button?
Yes. So what's the purpose of this? The purpose of this is like now I can pass stuff. So I can say this, the toggle show. And I can receive it here.
Yes, I know. Yeah, and then you
I'm
call
sorry.
it when
I'm
you-
sorry.
Yes.
Exactly. Where is it? Catch it.
So when you call it, you pass a parameter that you cache there, and then you.
Yeah, it's just a normal function that I will call here and pass stuff.
Yes.
It's a normal function here. If you get that this is a function that I call here, I can pass wherever I like here,
Yes.
including anything here, which is this method. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So now I can say on click,
So sure.
just toggle the show.
So it will trigger the function.
It will not.
Because
I-
their function is like not an arrow function.
Yeah, because this will state
Yeah.
will not be recognized. Blah, 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 all that stuff.
Equal sign. Yes.
So now if we say hello, we hide.
Yes.
We cannot get it back. The purpose was to hide it. We agreed that we want to hide it. We didn't discuss anything about bringing it
It's
back.
like toggle, but it's like switch on.
Yeah. Instead of doing that, we can go quick. We can go a bit. We can say counter. Initialize it with 0. Okay? And here we say counter plus 1. And here we say increment. And we pass the second parameter, which is this current counter. Make sense?
Yes.
We pass 2 instead of 1. Now here we get this increment. I will call it increment. I will call it increment. And I would say counter. And the button will display counter here. And we say increment. Make sense?
Yeah.
And we don't need this and show and anymore. It doesn't increment. Of course. Because
Yeah, so that's true.
yeah. So now we can increment. So this component, this small fragment here, can have access to a counter, an increment, and we can use this and reuse it everywhere. So every time I want to have like an increment feature or something, I don't need to build it again. I have this component, I pass a function to it, and it will call me back with all the stuff here. Does it make sense? What? It will? But if
So
you have
the show height is current and then
this one?
Show height is current.
No, let's say counter. It's better.
Yes.
I can also make a component that do HTTP requests for me. So I can make a component called fetch URL or something, and it will say in component did mount fetch the URL and pass me the data with this function.
But with this, when we're calling this function, does this mean like a child is like giving data back to parent, or it's just a function call?
It's a function call, and when we invoke this function, we return this data here. So technically we have a child, but that child we will not run it until we call the function.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So we are now passing data up and down.
No, this is down because this is a child of counter.
But
This is a child of counter.
But that's only calling.
Count button is a child of counter.
Yeah.
I'm calling it here, but instead it's a child of counter. Counter is not passing to up or something.
Oh yeah.
Make sense? All of you? I think it's time for a break.
And then please put this code set state before we go.
What?
Last part,
Which is set
Oh,
state
change,
before
yeah.
we go.
Eating lunch. Set state eating lunch.
And then we'll use the-
And we will use a set timeout after half an hour. Set it back to.